Right, guys, really sorry for the wait. Really sorry that I completely forgot about this today. Like I say in the chat, serves me right for changing the schedule. If I'd have, usually I remember when it's a Wednesday, I've been into that habit of doing it. So the fact that it's now a Friday, I just completely forgot. There's a few other things on my mind at the moment. So thank you again, Elliot, for messaging me. So hopefully you have been able to join me and you have still hung on for the last half an hour or so. So I really apologize again for not being there at the beginning. So what I was going to be doing today was just to look through all of the tasks that I've given you over the past few weeks with regards to the file handling stuff. Okay. Now this was the first week. The idea was to create a text file with some lines of data, maybe your favorite computer games, their price and year of sale, create a program that uses the with statement, reads the text file and prints each line one after the other, and create a program which asks the user to enter the name of one of the games in the file. It will then search the text file and print out the line of the text file which matches to the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Thonny and just go through this as I would do if I had been given this task. I think I've got a couple of things ready for this already, but I haven't done a whole lot to prepare for just going through this. So the first thing I'm going to need to do, obviously, is create a text file. So let's do that first, where we've got some lines of data. So let's open a text file, and I'm just going to add some lines of data. So I think I did this a little bit first the other day when we did this, but just to make it really clear what's going on here, I'm going to go through it again. So what did I say? Skyrim, Raving Rabbids. What other kinds of games can I think of? Gonna have to come up with some ideas. Oh, my goodness! Give me some ideas in the chat of different games I could add, because my mind is completely not here right now. Obviously, Skyrim, Raving Rabbids. What other games? The Sims 4. Portal. Portal's a good one. Yeah. Tetris. Good. Undertale. Sure. There we go. There's a few. Okay. So I've got some lines of data. What I would like to do as well is to make this just a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to also add in their price and their year of sale. Now, what this will mean is that I'm going to need to adjust the way I type in some of my code. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to put in some random prices because I can't be bothered to look up their prices right now. So I don't know, this was like £40 or something. And year of sale, that was what, 2011, I think, something like that. Raving Rabbids, depends which version you're talking about, but I don't know, £20. I'm just making up things now. And I don't know, this was 2009 or 2006 maybe, something like that. The Sims 4, wow, if you're looking at a particular version, again, probably about £40. And then, when did that come out? That would have been 2013 or something like that. Portal, that was, now that's probably been reduced recently, so I'm going to say £20 or something. It's quite a short game, really, the original Portal. And that, if I do Portal 2, instead of portal. That might be interesting. And then when did Portal 2 come out? Let's say 2011 again. I don't know. Tetris. Oh, that's going to be a really old one. Like £1. And then let's say you can probably buy it on eBay or something for that kind of price. And let's say 1985 or something. I don't know. I'm probably way out on these, and I don't know enough about Undertale to know. I'll say £30, and that it came out in 2005. I don't know. Okay, random data here. We don't really. It doesn't really matter what the data is. The idea is that we are creating a text file with some lines of data. Let's save this into this USB drive here, and let's call it games. Yeah. Okay. So we've got. So I wasn't too far off in terms of Portal 2 came out in 2011. I was correct there, and Tetris came out in 1984, which is only 1 year out. So if I save that now quickly, so I'm quite happy with my guesses there. So Thonny, what are we doing here? So we're creating a program which uses the with statement to read the text file and printing each line one after the other. So we called the text file games, didn't we? We called it games.txt. And be careful here, because as always, anytime you write anything with a capital letter, that capital needs to be included as well. So I'm just going to put in with open, and remember, I'm doing this from memory because I remember how to do this. But if you needed to do this by looking at the examples we've got here, you could quite easily do that if you looked at the PowerPoint that we had from before. So, sorry, let's open the Thonny instead. With open games.txt, oops, and don't forget that capital there, because everything needs to be written exactly the same way, because otherwise it thinks it's a completely different thing. And then I'm going to open that in read mode as file. Okay, and then all I want to do is read the text file and print each line one after the other. So the quickest way of doing that is going to be print file.read. Open close brackets and then close brackets for the print statement. So if I run that, make sure it's saved in the same place. Hang on, task 1, I'll call it. And there you go. We've got all of that information there. Interestingly, you can see that this pound sign has this extra bit of information in front of it here, but that's because it's being printed out. Remember, if you think back to when we were doing our lessons on data representation, and that certain characters weren't saved in ASCII, and the pound sign was one of them. So original ASCII didn't have the pound sign, so that's why it's got this funny A symbol in there as well. But you can see that generally it's printing out the correct data. So that is task 1 complete. Task 2 says create a program which asks the user to enter the name of one of the games in the file. It will then search the text file and print out the line of the text file which matches to the screen. Now, because I've added in information about the price and the year, this is going to be slightly different to how I would do it if I had just put the name of the file. So really, I'm just going to do almost the same thing here, but instead of printing the file, I'm going to be saving that into a variable. I might just call it content. So the content of the file is the file.read. What I might also do is .splitlines. Okay, so that we can, this has been split. If I add a little comment here, this splits the file into a list. Okay, so a reminder of how we look at this. So as I've written up here, you'll need to use your knowledge of lists to do these tasks. So creating a program which asks the user to enter the name of one of the games in the file. So how do we do that? We ask them for an input. So answer equals input, brackets, what game, or just what game. I can't be bothered to write a full sentence at the moment. Okay. And then it will then search the text file and print out the line of the text file which matches to the screen. So we've already saved the content into, well, a list of the content into a group, into a variable, and so it's going to search the text file and it's going to print out the line of the text file which matches to the screen. So what we want it to do is print out the full line, and we probably also want to say what line it was on. So what we're going to do is remember how to go through each part of the list. So for game in content, so I've called it game. Oops, I've been writing in Java recently, so a couple of my I've started having to add in extra brackets, which you don't need in Python. So if I start doing that, that's why. So what was I doing? So for game in content, and don't forget your colon. For game in content, if game, or hang on, if answer in game, then, so colon, if my answer, as in what the user has typed in, is in the name, the whole, this is the game here, or this is one game, this is another game, this is another game. If the answer is in the game, then we're going to print game, and that will print out just the name of the game. So, well, not the name of the game, but the full line for that game. So if I, task 2, if I just say Sims, then it will say The Sims 4, and you can see straight away that Sims is only one of the words in it, and it's not even at the beginning of it, but it still prints out that line. So that's where this if answer in game is really useful. So this keyword in has two different meanings here. So game in content means just go, so for each line of the content, so I could write the word line here instead, but I've called it game because I know that each line has a game on it, right? So that just goes through every line of the file. So that's what the for loop does, and the in means there. But if we pair it with an if, we're asking if it is in that thing. So if I were to say if I was to maybe try and find one that comes up a couple of times, try and see. How about if I do it like this? So if I run it again and I say 20, then it should come up with all of the games that were released in 2000 and something, or if I put 200, then it will come up with the 2 games that came out in 2006 or 2005. So if I press enter here, you can see the one that came out in 2006 and the one that came out in 2005. It will print both of them because it's gone through every game, and if that answer is in the game, then it will still print out that item. Okay. The other thing I wanted to do is to print out the number for that in there. Now, what we might have to do here, just to remind ourselves how to do this, is to look back at the lesson that we did on lists. And this is something I do all the time. I've been writing a little app in Java, and I've had to go back to my university textbooks to check the way I'm writing my code is correct. Because when you're writing code in real life, if you're just doing everyday coding, then it's not as simple as just knowing everything off the top of your head. Being able to remember things is good because it means you get to do it faster, but sometimes you will need to look things up. And obviously, for you guys, you will need to remember some things because you'll have an exam with this kind of stuff in it. So what I'm doing, I'm just going to open up the lists PowerPoint and have a quick look through to remind myself how I find the one item in the list. So how do I know? I think it's something about index. So I'm looking for an index of, yeah, here we go. So there we go. If you know where a value is in the list, you can find out where. So I can say friends, which was the name of this list, dot index, and then in brackets, and I can even put in game here, right? So I'm going to do that. Go on to Thonny. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to look at this. So something dot index. So I'm going to say content dot index game. So I'm looking for, so game is one of the lines, isn't it? And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this above instead of below, just pasting that back in, and I'm going to put in print. And what I'm actually going to do is put in a plus, in fact not plus, comma, end equals nothing. So you see I've got my open close speech marks here, no space in between it or anything, just means I'm ending with nothing, whereas usually we end, the default end, which I think comes up if I start typing here, end equals, no, it doesn't show up, end equals nothing. Usually it will show you that the default is your \n, which is why whenever you print something, it goes onto another line. If that \n wasn't there, then it actually prints out the next line or the next part without a gap, or without that. What I'll do is I'll put a nice little full stop and a space, because actually I want it to say something like 1 dot space raving rabbits, or whatever the line was. So if I run that again and the user's typing in, let's see, port. Okay. Oh, it's because it's got a capital. So if I run it again, the same issue that we've got here. If I write port, so it's shown me that it's on line 3, and it's put in that dot and space there. So this is showing. In fact, let me put this in a comment for you. This prints out the index for the line, and let me put that on a new line, and doesn't go onto a new line. Okay. Now the other way I could do this is put game just here, and the other way I could have done it is print content.index. Oops, got to spell things correctly. Game, and then plus dot comma, not comma, and then plus game. Right? That's exactly the same as doing this, but sometimes you'll want to put an end. You'll say the end is a specific type. So if I was to run this and say poor again, oops, because I'm trying to put together an integer into a string. So what I need to do is convert this. If you remember back to our very first lessons on programming, we are this, oops, not SR, STR. I need to convert this into a string so that it can be printed, because otherwise the computer's like, I don't know how to print a number. Usually if you put a string, a thing on its own, a bit like we've done here, it doesn't complain about that. But if you try and concatenate it using these pluses, that's when it comes up with some issues. So it doesn't know how to concatenate an integer and some strings. Okay, so that's where the issue lies there. So if I do it again, it's printing out the same thing twice because, as I said, these lines here do exactly the same thing as this line here. All right, so moving on, because we're like halfway through the lesson already and we haven't even gotten to the other tasks yet. So if I find file handling 2 and just open up the challenges for this one. So write a program that writes your top 10 films of all time to a text document. I'm just going to do this. I'm not going to do too much on this, but so this was the lesson where we were looking at writing to text files. So we needed to open in write mode. We needed to say new file.write, and then you can go \n to put in new lines. You can even put them all onto one line if you want, and that just all gets saved into your text document. So if I open that back up, so I want to write my list of top 10 films of all time. I'm just going to be really lazy here, and instead of top 10 films, I'm just going to do these again because, as I say, it's a bit lazy, but if I get rid of all of this bit, it's just going to take a bit too long for me to be creative enough to come up with the ideas for this, because you've seen me already taking forever trying to do that. So instead of top 10 films of all time, I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do 6 games to a text document. And to make it really clear that I haven't already made this, I'm just going to open the USB folder just so you can see what's already in here. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I've only got example 2. What else is that? I can't see from here. Games, which I just made earlier, the new file, and turtle colors from a previous lesson. So, and then there's a few Thonny files in there as well. So I'm just going to, what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be putting all of these into the text file, the text document. So this should be fairly straightforward as well. So I don't need to create my file beforehand, because if I am opening in write mode, then it will create my file for me if it doesn't already exist. So I'm going to say with open, let's create, let's say this is task 3, isn't it? Task 3. task3.txt, right? I'm just going to call it task3.txt, and I'm going to open it in write mode by using a W. Okay, close my bracket and say as file. Okay, and then what I want to do is file dot write. Okay, and what I'm going to do is just put in these items. Now what I could do is Skyrim \n, close brackets, file.write, raving rabbids, \n, close brackets, etc. Other things I could do is write in like this, \n, and then go straight into the next one. Portal 2, \n, Tetris, \n, because it's all still being written as if it's one line to the file. Now if I save and run this, my cat's going a little bit mad. If I save and run this, just gonna call this one task3, then it looks like nothing happens. But if I open this back up again, you should see that this text file has appeared as well. And if I open that up, we move that over here. Again, we've got our file, and even though the last 4 games were put on one line like this, because of those \n's, it was saved as separate lines. Okay, so hopefully you've been able to remember about that \n idea. Okay, second one was list your top 10 songs of all time in a text document and create a program that reads the entire text file and displays it to a screen. Well, we've basically just done that idea with task 1, haven't we? So really, task 1 is the idea that you'd be using there. We don't really need to go through the task 4 here, which is actually part 2, task 2, but because that will do pretty much the same thing as that. That was just me testing to see if you had remembered from the previous week. So I'm going to leave that for today because I don't want to spend too long going through this. Number 3, write a program that asks the user for a list of shopping items and then writes each item in turn to a text document that the user can then physically print out. So I'm going to create another new document. And so what we're doing here, we're asking the user, so that straight away when you see ask the user, you think, oh, I need an input here, and it's going to be a list of shopping items. So we're going to be asking them lots of times, okay? So what we're going to do, what I would like to do, is ask them first how many they want. How many items, question mark, okay? And I'm going to turn that into an integer because hopefully if the user's not being silly, they're going to type in a number here, okay? Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, I'm going to go in a loop. So I'm going to say for I in range num, okay? And then I'm going to say in, oh, hang on. Also, what I need to do is create a list, and I'm going to call it shopping. And I'm going to make an empty list here, you see, by putting this open close brackets, okay? So what I'm going to do is say shopping dot add and then input. So what I'm doing here, oops, input, and then type an item to add to your list, right? So there are two ways we could, oh, I've missed a bracket here. Let's close that bracket. Oops, still went to the wrong place. So we could have done this in a while loop. I'll show you the other way we could have done this as well. So, and then once we've finished, once they've gone through and added all the items to the list, what I might actually do is create my text document so that in this loop it adds it. But actually, just to make it really easy, I'm just going to create my text document here. So with open, so we've done this a few times now, shopping.txt. Oops, make sure I spell that right. Otherwise, we get a file format that we don't that we can't read, and then that's in write mode as file. Okay. So I'm opening the shopping.txt as a file in write mode, and then what I'm going to do is file.write. Hang on. File.write lines, and I'm doing write lines because I know this is a list rather than just one long string of text like it was for this one. Okay, so file.write lines shopping. Okay, now let's see if this works the way I want it to. So I'm going to say how many items, oh, shopping, oops, shopping list. How many items? I'm going to say 3 just to make this easy. Eggs. Oops. Oh, hang on. Shopping.add. So, oh, I've forgotten how lists work. So let's go back to our list lesson. So again, this is me forgetting how to do things. Ah, it's not add, is it? It's my special word. Append. Let's see if I can find it. There we go, append. I'd forgotten that we use the word append, and that's partly because I've been working in a different programming language than Python, and so they use the word add instead of append. How many items do you want? So three items. Type an item. Oh, my goodness, typos all over the place here. Type an item to add to your list. So eggs, milk, and butter, right? So eggs, milk, and butter, some nice dairy-based shopping list there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open this file again and have a look at the very bottom. Shopping.txt has appeared, and oh, I had forgotten that, in fact, that write lines clearly doesn't do what I expected it to do. So again, I need to go and look back and figure out why it's doing that. So let me go back through and have a look and see. Okay, so this wasn't really mentioned in this lesson, really, was it? So the way, if I'm just going off of what I know from this lesson, what I'm probably going to end up doing is move this to here and then indent all of this again. But I'm going to indent this one as well. And then get rid of these gaps in between. And instead of shopping, and what I might actually do is cut this out and get rid of this shopping list, because although this is useful for later, it's not doing what we want it to be doing at the moment. So file.write lines, instead of file.write lines, I'm going to say file.write, and then there's the input statement, and then I'm going to say file.write \n. Okay, because then that will allow that gap between each line. So again, if I run this, how many items? 5. Let's get some other bread. What else do we need in our strawberries, bananas, being nice and healthy here. Oh, I've spelt that wrong. And then a pizza to be a bit less healthy, and let's see, yogurt. All right. Again, have I spelled that wrong? Yeah, I have, haven't I? Okay, and then if I go back, obviously from before, this was eggs, milk, butter. If I close that and then open it again, it gives us bread, strawberries, bananas, pizza, and yogurt. Okay, so that's how you would add in the file, different items in your file. Okay, so that is the second lesson's worth of data. So this one, again, you can do this in several different ways. Another way you could have done it is instead of having this here, you could say while. In fact, I'm just going to say answer equals nothing while. Oh, just going to put in, I'm changing a few things around, but effectively staying the same. And then delete that last bit there. So ans, okay, so I'm writing an ans, this ans, otherwise known as answer. So I'm going to put while answer is not equal to, oops, not and, ans is not equal. Remember the exclamation mark equal sign, that means not equal to. While answer is not equal to no. We're going to be adding another item. So type no to finish. Okay, and then so this will let me keep adding items to my list as long as I want to add items to my list, which is a bit more reasonable, a bit more like what we would be doing. So I'm going to spell yogurt right this time. There we go. Banana, chocolate, bread, milk, eggs, and let me think, done eggs, done milk, done chocolate, tomatoes. All right, and then I go, okay, I'm done. So no, I don't want any more. Okay. So what might actually happen here, I've just realized, is that it will have no at the end. So I'm just going to have a look at my list. If I oh no, that's not the right one. I already closed it. So open shopping again, and again, it will say no at the bottom. So what you might want to do is say, instead of type no, you just put in if it's nothing. So I'm going to say that just actually what I'm doing is asking the user to add an item to their list at the very beginning, and then while the answer is not equal to nothing, they're going to type enter to finish instead of no, and that will mean that when they write the thing in there, it won't matter so much. Oops. Oh, I've forgotten to close my speech mark, and it even gave me a nice big green bar to show me. Type an item to add to your list. Broccoli, bananas, eggs, and then I'm going, all right, I'm done. I can't be bothered to add anything else. So I press enter, and then I should only have in my new shopping list bananas and eggs. Oh, I didn't have broccoli in there because this input file was added afterwards. So what I could do again, so you can see I'm kind of editing my code as I go, because there's not one clear way of doing everything. So if I press play now and I put in chicken, not chicken, chicken, mayo, want some chicken, mayo, pasta, rice, cat food, and then I'll press enter to finish, okay? And then shopping list, I've got chicken, mayo, pasta, rice, cat food, and I've got that extra line, but that doesn't matter too much. I don't really need to worry about that. Okay, so that is part 3. Let me just see where we're at for time. Okay, I should just about be able to go through part 4 as well. So, not part 4, but the 3rd file handling lesson to show what we did there. So this one's a little bit more complicated. So creating a text file with some names and scores. So I'm literally just going to copy this text file because it's going to be a little bit easier to do that. Let me open a brand new notepad document for this. So let me make this a bit bigger so I can see. So we've got Mr. WPF. Let me put the scores first because just to make this a little bit easier on myself. Mr. WPF, 13, got lucky, 13, and then newbie got 4, and then 3, best of 3, and then 2 is just 2, right? Not very inspiring names here, but you get the idea. I'm just going to save this in the same place as high scores. And again, I have to be aware here that I've got capital H, capital S, and it is being saved as a TXT document. So if I minimize that for a minute, open up my Thonny again. So it's asking to update a particular user with a new score. So let's see, we've got, let's say newbie has gotten a better score this time, okay? So to edit his or her score, could be a he or a her, we're going to, let me just find where I put that, there it is. We're going to need to find what that score is, and we're going to have to ask the user what user to change. So user equals input, what is the name of the user, okay, and then score equals input, what was their new score, okay. And so at this point, this is again where you might want to look back and go, okay, that's appending, I don't want to do that. That's inserting, that's deleting. But this is where we overwrite, okay? So if we're looking at data 1, yeah, we're overwriting a particular line in the text file. So going back to this one. So what I need to do is open the file that we've already got, which was high scores, I think we called it, highscores.txt. So with open high scores, make sure I spell it right, .txt, and comma, we'll open it in read mode first as file. Okay, so I'm opening this text file as a file, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to save that as my my file.readlines, so that it saves all the different lines, including those \n's that can be a little bit more difficult to use. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did here. Data equals file.readlines. Okay, I call it file here because that's what I've called it here, whereas here I called it my file. Okay, so once I've done that, what's the task? To update a particular user with a new score. So what I'm going to have to do is use my knowledge of lists again to find a particular user. Okay, so again, what I will be doing is creating a loop. So for line in file in data, for each line in my data, I'm going to check is so if the user is in the line. So if the user that the user's typed in is in that line, then I'm going to overwrite that line. Now, what I need to do, unfortunately, is find out the index of that line as well. So there are two ways I could have done this. And I think because I need that index, I'm just going to change the way I have written this this here. So I'm going to say for I in range and say data dot in len of data, sorry, going ahead of myself. So that is to find the length of the file. And I'm going to say if user in data I. Okay. Then I'm going to say if the user's in data I, I'm going to say data I equals score plus, in fact, again, I'm going to need this to be a string because we are concatenating here. Score plus gap, because that's how we've written it in the original. We wrote it like this, score gap, and then user. Okay. And then that should update that item. So, and then what I'll just print out, so updated, so that we know as the user that it's been updated. Okay. What I might also add in is just if user not in. I'll leave that because it's going to be a bit far too confusing. So I'm just going to run this, and I'm going to call this one. What do I want to do? Task. Where were we up to? Task 3. So let's call this task 4. I know it's not quite task 4, but you get the idea. What is the name of the user? So what were the users we had? We had Mr. MVP, Lucky 13, newbie. I'm going to say newbie. Don't forget that capital. Okay, newbie. And then new score, I'm going to say they got 20. All right. And it says updated. So now, if I go into my high scores, if I close the one we had before, they had, if I zoom in, before their score was 13. If I close that, no, sorry, I'm thinking of the wrong one. Before their score was 4, sorry. And then if I open it again, oh, I know what I did. I didn't save it back into the file. That was silly of me. Okay, so I'm just going to have to open up my file again, aren't I? So with open, so I changed it in the list, but not in the file. So that's something that you need to be aware of. You need to think about when you're doing this kind of thing as well. Okay, so with open, high scores, same idea as before, but we're opening it in write mode this time. So I'm just going to change that one bit there. With open W as file, file.write data. Okay, and then update there. So if I run this again, what's the name of the user? Newbie, and then they've got a new score of so their score's gone up by 1, so they're now at a score of 5. Oops. Of course, file.write lines instead of file.write. Again, do it again. Newbie, and then new score of 5. And oh, it hasn't said updated, so I'm just going to check to see whether it has been updated. Ah, it's been written over, which is a bit worrying. Okay, let's go add in all of those high scores again. That's very strange why it's done that. Let me just figure out why. And again, it's ooh, I've closed that by accident. It's this one here, isn't it? It's not letting me see the. There we go. Okay. So I've got my high score list with. Let me type these in again because for whatever reason they got overwritten, and that's probably because of that error that we had. So Mr. WPF, and he had a score. Let me zoom in and see what I'm doing. 15 was his score. 13, lucky 13. 4, newbie. And then 3, best of 3. And then 2, just 2. Okay. And then I'm going to save that again. File save. You see that the star's gone because I've just saved it. And then I'll run it again because hopefully it should work this time. Let's run it again. Newbie. And then their new score is going to be 10 this time. Oops, not 0, 10. Okay, updated. So hopefully now if we open the file again, if I close the one we already had open and open it from here. So yeah, what I forgot to add in was that \n, but you can see that it's been updated to that. And so I need to add into this plus \n. Okay. And as you can see, every time that I'm doing this, I'm having to test as I go along. It's even though I basically know my way around programming, I still need to do a little bit of testing, a little bit of, oh, I forgot to add this, or oh, I forgot to do this entire saving it back into a file deal. So press play again. Let's do a different user this time. Let's say best of 3 actually managed to get 7 this time. So best of 3. So that's the username, and their score was 7. And again, oh, because it couldn't find beast of 3 because I spelt it wrong. So do it again. Best of 3. Make sure I've spelt it right. What was their new score? 7. And now it says updated because it's gone into this line here. And if I've got to close and open it again. Opening up high scores. Best of 3 now has a score of 7. Okay. And it has that \n involved in there as well. Okay, that one took a while. Let's see where we're at for time. Inserting a new score into a particular position in the file. So this is where we are looking at this bit here. Okay, so if I open up Thonny, new thing again. So I'm going to add in to this list here, this high scores list, a new score. So I'm going to be, I've only put luck 13 instead of lucky 13. I'm going to be adding a new score. Say it's going to be the best score. So I'm going to say someone got a score of 20, and it's going to be Mrs. Mook, and they're going to be at the top of the list. So in user, so same idea as I did before. In fact, I could probably just copy that over. What was their score? Oops. And then index equals inputs. Where do you want it? Okay. So because I know this is going to be the top score, I'm going to do the same idea as before. Copy all this over just to make this a little bit faster rather than having too long on this. So it's looking at the data, and so it's read the data into our read lines, into our list, and we now want to edit that item. So we know that the index is where we're going to be. So what we're going to say is data and then of index. So instead of data 0 or data 5 or data 4, it's at the index that the user has typed in. And thinking about that, we're going to need an integer there, because otherwise it's not going to know how to put that as a string in there. It needs to be an integer in there. Data.index equals, and then we're going to do the same thing as we did here. We're turning that score into a string, which again, I didn't actually make this a integer in the first place, so I didn't really need to do that. Data index is string of score plus space plus user plus \n. Okay, and then I'm gonna write that line. Same idea as I did before, and get rid of those extra indentations there. If I run this, so I've opened the file in write mode this time, and I'm writing that data that includes that bit that I've changed into there. So if I run it, remember that before I run it even, if I look at the high scores, I've got just these values at the moment. I'm going to say, if I run it, what was this task? Task 5. What is the name of the user? Mrs. Mook. And then what was their score? I'm going to say I got a high score of 20, and I want it at index 0. Now it hasn't done anything because I didn't tell it to add any extra information to tell the user. But if I click on high scores, you can see Mrs. Mook 20 at the very top there, which is basically exactly where we want her, that score there. We don't really have enough time to go through this last item. Now, these items are already in descending order, so I'm not going to need to change any of that. But I need to insert a new user and score into the correct position based on its numerical value. You need to compare the score with the scores already in the list. So what I'll do quickly, very quickly, is again, new one, and I won't put index this time. I'm going to go for line in data, and then again, I'm using the wrong for line in data if line dot starts. Wait, hang on, I'm just going to have to change something. This is where I haven't taught you one of the concepts that would actually be really useful here, which I just realized you would have needed here. So if line dot, let's say, okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to change a couple of things about this. Just going to make all of the scores the same amount of characters, and you'll see why in a minute. So if what I'm going to do is change this into an integer. If int of line 0 to 2, and this is something I will go into a bit more detail on in another lesson when we talk about string manipulation, but at the moment, just take my word for it, this takes the first 2 items in your 2 characters in your line. If my line 0 to 2, and turn that into an integer, is less than score, and again I'm going to have to make sure this is an integer because otherwise I can't compare things. If that is less than the score, then I'm going to find out what the index is. So line.index, data.index of line, item equals data.index line. So I'm going to say data item is string score user, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, I've kind of rushed through this, so I apologize for the rushing and not really explaining how this works. Hopefully, you'll have a bit of time to look back through this. And so this is task 6, I think we're on. Okay. What is the name of the user? Let's say Elliot, because he reminded me about the thing. I'm going to say you didn't quite get as good a score as me, just so I can see where we are in here. But let's say you get a score of 12. Okay, your score of 12 doesn't look like anything's happened, but I will open up the high scores. Oh, it's overwritten some of those things. So what I've forgotten to do is break out of the break, and this is a special word that will stop you from carrying on in a list. So if I open up one of the older versions and save this, then try again. So Elliot, and then they got 12. Hopefully that break should have stopped the so you can see before we didn't have as many values in there, but now we've got, in fact, I've just overwritten an item, haven't I? Oh, I've forgotten to add an item instead of so inserting, so data.insert is what I should have done there. You get the idea. So apologies for the long lesson, and apologies again for being so late. Hopefully you found this somewhat useful at least, and being able to go back through the tasks that we've done has been somewhat useful to you. Hopefully next time we'll be looking at string manipulation, and we can kind of talk about how we can use string manipulation alongside file handling in the future. So when I talk about string manipulation, I mean being able to take a string or a piece of text and manipulate it and find certain parts of that string, for example. Okay, have a lovely week, and I will see you next week. Bye, guys.